Thanks for staying with us. This is Daybreak, and lovely having you here on the broadcast. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Kenneth Chesa on my far right is an education law expert. Good morning. Good morning, Ayub. And a teacher.
Yes, a teacher of English and literature.
Good morning. Lovely having you here on the broadcast.
Thank you.
Professor Lukoye Atwoli is the Dean, Aga Khan University Medical College. Good morning, Prof.
Good morning.
Pleasure having you again here on the broadcast.
Thank you for having me.
And the representative of the great people of Suba South, Honorable Karoli Omondi, is also with us in studio this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Ayub.
Pleasure having you here on the broadcast.
Thank you.
To discuss this very important topic. And gentlemen, let's first begin with the assurance yesterday given by the President, who attended a church service here in Nairobi County, where he said that education is free.
Just want to give assurance that education cannot be compromised. We cannot compromise access. We cannot compromise quality. We cannot compromise affordability, and we cannot compromise relevance.
Prof, to you first. Yeah. Is Kenya prepared for its future?
You know, that's a difficult question about whether Kenya is prepared for the future, because before you talk about a future, you have to talk about your past and your present. I think we've done a very good job discussing the political realities in this country and our political history and so on, and in some instances revising things. But we haven't done as well in internalizing a vision for what Kenya is and who Kenyans are, and therefore where Kenyans want to be. The evidence of this is seen in a lot of the public policy, the legislation that we make, a lot of the interventions that we make, which appear to be incoherent and do not look like they are aligned to a certain vision or a certain value system that we have accepted for ourselves. In the making of the new constitution of 2010, there were conversations around that, but those conversations were often overshadowed by political, sharing of positions and jousting and so on and so forth. So we didn't really get deeply into what it means to be Kenyan, and therefore we didn't have much time to think about where we want Kenya to go and what the future looks like. We have a lot of slogans that we throw around, but I do not see a coherent sense of Kenyanness that you can see it infused in all public policy, you see it infused in all legislation, you see it infused in public pronouncement by those that have been given responsibility of leadership, and therefore it is difficult for you to distill that and place it into a system like the education system, the health system, and so on. So somebody observing the country from outside and looking at everything we do, it will be difficult for them to discern and say, this is what Kenyans stand for. Perhaps over the past few years, with the young people, having a different way of doing things and a different vision, perhaps we will start seeing an emergence of something that we can call a Kenyan consciousness. But I do not think we have that at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. And coming to you, Mwalimu Kenneth Chesa, and this being the very foundation of the Kenyan society, what was then itemized as a priority area by the founding administration to today, more than 60 years later, appears that our vision is foggy and not clear as to what we exactly want for the future of our kids who are in schools.
It is true, Ayub. At independence, President Kenyatta identified 3 things that were of priority, and among them was elimination of ignorance, which means he was going to give education a priority. In fact, an entire commission was put in place, the Professor Ominde Commission, that designed an education system that will fit into the needs of a new country. Throughout the Kenyatta and the Nyayo period, we saw a struggle in terms of attaining that particular right. In fact, when we were in school, we had something called development fees. We could pay 1,000. But the beauty with that development fee is that if my father was able and paid 1,000 shillings in a primary school, all other parents who were unable in the village, provided their children used my father's name, they will go to school and learn. And we had quality education then. When Kibaki came in, he brought in the concept of free primary education, which saw double enrollment in primary schools, meaning that even that 1,000 had locked many potential children out of school. And in 2007, Kibaki toyed with, and in 2008, implemented the free day secondary education. In boarding schools, for instance, the schools were to be given 22,244 shillings. And I think it was only on Kibaki who was in power that money was sent to the tune of 80%. Throughout the Uhuru administration and the current administration, this money has never reached schools in its entirety. For instance, let us pick this year, 22,244. 50% of this money is to be released in term 1, because term 1 is the heaviest academic term. In term 2, the government is supposed to disperse 30%, and in term 3, 20%. As we speak today, we are just 3 days shy of completing term 2. Government released 6,000 shillings in term 1, and government released 2,000 shillings in term 2. The billions you see the PS toying around every press statement, the CS, that we have released 22 billion. This actually translates to 8,000 shillings for term 1 and term 2. And 50%, even for arithmeticians, will tell you that will come to 11,000 and about something.
11,100.
11,100. That is 50%. That is the money that ought to have been given in term 1. But as the completion of term 2, they have only given 8,000. And this has been the trend, Ayub, for the past 10 years, is that government has never funded free secondary education to the tune of, say, 50% or to the tune of 48%. In primary school, they get 1,420 shillings. And still that money is only sent to the tune of 50%. What is unfortunate, that even the 8,000 that the government sends, it still picks some with the left hand. They pick money to run ministry activities at the sub-county, county, and regional level. They have retained what we call textbook funds. And this year alone, government has only sent money, or has sent textbooks in one set book. One English set book, when it retains money to send set books across the 11 or 12 learning areas.
Okay.
This is a con game. And what the president was saying yesterday is lip service at its best.
And 50% of the 6,000 you talked about, ideally 11,122 for term 1, then that is already a deficit of more than 5,000 shillings. And for term 2, a deficit of more than 4,000 Kenya shillings. So we'll ask the questions as to why and how the Kibaki administration managed to release the funding. Honorable Karoli Mwani, coming to you. Talking of such a critical sector, how then do we get it right in fixing?
Thank you very much, Ayub. Let me begin by saying that the statements by the CS for Treasury last week, that we have been living a lie, and that both free primary education and free day secondary education is unsustainable, were very unfortunate statements. I think it caused a lot of anxiety, as you can see, with the reaction from members of the public. But there's great reassurance that at least the president, even the opposition chief, Right Honorable Raila, and everybody else have come out and strongly opposed such statement. What you see is the attitude of a bean counter, somebody who is just behaving like a financial controller, an account controller or something. Education requires very progressive thinking, very broad-based outlook to situations, and because of what it does to society. So those statements were very unfortunate. Development economists will tell you if you walk into a country and you want to see the prospects of that country, you just need to inquire about two things. What is their expenditure on education? And the second one is you look at the levels of innovation as demonstrated in their patents office, intellectual property legislation and frameworks. So countries that spend a lot in their education have a better future. And that is reflected in the innovations you see in those countries. In Kenya, the reason why I say the statements by the CS Treasury were very unfortunate. If there's one thing where Kenya has been rated high, in fact, within Africa, Kenya is #1, if you take out South Africa, in terms of education expenditure, education outcomes, and enrollment. In terms of enrollment, since 2003, when President Kibaki introduced free primary education, early childhood enrollment is at 78%. Primary school enrollment is at near universal, it's about 100%, while in high school is between 50 and 70%, depending on the region. When it comes to education expenditure, Kenya has achieved all the international benchmarks, whether you look at it as a percentage of GDP, where the average is 4.3%, Kenya is at 5.3%. And the recommended, I think, average is about 5%. Whether you look at it as expenditure per capita, even within the households, or as a share of the national budget. So we have done very well in this sector. So it is not something that we should take lightly. And I think as Parliament, I'm sure we are going to have some debates on it this week, but we are going to protect what has been achieved. Actually, the role of the Treasury, if you look at the PFM Act or even our Constitution, is to mobilize resources for priority programs. That is what we should be hearing from the CS Treasury. He should be telling us how he's mobilizing resources instead of being counting to deliver free and primary and day secondary education. And also tell us if we are not having enough resources for this, what is he doing to establish efficient financial management systems that can deal away with the wastage and corruption in the sector so that we don't kill what is working for everybody.
And before I go to Prof. Honorable Karoli, you mentioned education taking a lion's share of our now ongoing financial year. But isn't it also appalling, and should this be the next course of discussion for Parliament where you sit, as to then ask the questions why schools remain in wanting state and the setbacks that parents continue to experience, stakeholders continue to face? How then do we square this out, ask these questions, and if need be, also upscale this budget, as you have said, then measure our development progress by not only the investments that we make, but also the follow-up policy questions that ought to be also placed at the doorstep of those who are holding the offices that the education docket.
Actually, the greatest challenge for the education sector is lack of efficiency in use of resources. If you look at various reports on this sector, they'll tell you the resources that are available are also fragmented, and there's a lot of theft, wastage, lack of transparency, and inequity in the distribution of those resources. So what we should be talking about is getting those in charge to have what I call government seriousness in trying to solve these issues, because these are not very difficult issues to solve. Today, the funding pathways for education are numerous. You have the NGCDF, you have bursaries, you have direct capitation grants, you have even donations. Some learning institutions have their own incomes from their own activities. You see, this thing goes beyond primary and secondary. It goes up to the university. But the problem we are having is you don't see government seriousness in trying to solve these issues. For example, I'm not an education expert, but I do know we should have a mechanism that clearly demonstrates how the money leaves the treasury to the schools and how it is used, who checks on it. We may have all those mechanisms, but there's still a lot of theft. You saw the Auditor General's report.
Yeah.
Is it last week?
Yes.
Where teachers are guilty, school administrators are guilty. There's a particular school I'm aware of, I will not mention it, but just across that school, a teacher who's been heading that school for a long time has a very big educational system across the road and a hotel. And I've always wondered, how did this happen? And if you look at, if we are serious and we look at the way capitation grant is being used, you'll realize that numbers are being inflated.
Yeah.
But the solution is very simple. We need to use data and automation to get to know how many pupils do we have, what is their cost of keeping them in school, whether it is learning and teaching materials, the operations, instead of just sending money and not having accurate data. Because people are taking advantage of the situation also.
And Nancy Gathongo pointed that out when she appeared before Parliament, the failure by NEMIS to arrest that fraud, how schools that were non-existent, only on paper, had gotten capitation. And we'll come to that in a moment, because that points to also the direction of broken oversight institutions. But Prof, ideally, when you look at the debate around it and how the institution of parents and stakeholders had responded to the submissions by the Treasury CS, I mean, it's so concerning, is it, in the sense that schools are not only brick and mortars, but also engines of social mobility that inform how then we progress and take the next leap forward as a nation?
So I'll begin by saying that I think, contrary to what many people are saying, I think the CS Treasury told us the truth in a moment of weakness. I think he forgot that he's meant to be a politician and is supposed to be sugarcoating things and, basically telling us, giving us a rosy picture. I think CS Mbadi told the truth. And the truth that he told is that notwithstanding what is put in the budget, the expenditures have been less than whatever is in the budget for a long period of time. So what he was saying is that we are living a lie. That when we sit down and write in the budget that we will disburse enough money, amounting to 22,000 shillings for the day secondary schools, we know that we are not going to disburse that amount, even when we are writing it into the budget. So that is what he was saying. And he was saying we've been living a pauper's life with a rich man's budget. And so in his moment of weakness, he indicated that instead of living a lie, let us now make it real and really allocate exactly what we spend. So that is the first thing that I picked from this conversation. And so we need to actually interrogate these figures when we say we are doing very well in budgeting for education and that we are spending this percentage of our budget on education. Are we really spending that much? We need to start looking at actual expenditures from this budget, and we will find that we are not. And so we are not doing as well as we claim to be doing. I think 10 years of under-disbursement is telling. It means we are paying lip service to a certain thing. We are saying we think education is important, we are budgeting the bulk of our money to spend on education, but when it comes to actual expenditure, we find that we are not. And whatever we are spending, there's a lot of fraud, there's a lot of waste, there's a lot of abuse. And this is why you see the schools looking the way they are. This is why you're seeing the kinds of things that are happening in our education system. I think one of the scourges of this country is what one might call vendor-driven policy making. And at the beginning of this competence-based education system, I remember a CS who said that she has looked at the entire infrastructure that's available. She's looked at whatever we have and whatever is needed to implement this system, and that she thought we were not ready and we needed to give it some time. I think she even said a runway of about 5 years for us to be able to deliver on quality. She was fired and sent to another ministry, and somebody else was placed in that ministry who started saying that we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, despite all the indications from the sector stakeholders. Why was this happening? It was happening because, and we saw snippets of it in the media, that there were publishers who had materials ready for the first year of implementation of that CBC. They had materials ready before even the government declared itself ready to implement. And they were a loud voice in saying, you must implement this year. We have already invested in books, we have already invested in what? And the kinds of things they had invested in were consumable things. In the past, the textbooks that Mwalimu was talking about here were textbooks that will be handed over to your next sibling and so on and so forth. Today, everything is yours and yours alone. And after you use it at the end of the year, it cannot be handed over to anyone else, and you have to go back to the vendors and get more material. So this idea of vendor-driven policy making, we have to interrogate that as well. But at the end of the day, if you're asking me about how seriously we take education, I think we have a thing coming. We have to sit down and really put our money where our mouth is. If we think education is important, we have to go to the philosophical foundations of our education system and ask ourselves, who has set up this education system and for what goals? Are they serving the goals of what we might think are Kenyan goals? So the content, the delivery, and so on. And then at the end of the day, what are we trying to achieve with this education system? And if we all agree that these things are important and these are the things we want to deliver on, then we will budget for it and we will spend the money that we budget on that system. As opposed to what we are doing now, which is really, it's a rigmarole. It's something that, okay, we have a budget, we have to put in education, we have to put in health, we have to put in infrastructure, but we know we are not going to implement it. The MPs basically are doing an academic exercise. Put this number of billions in education, put this in health, and so we know we are not going to spend that much. And we also know that this budget is not going to last 3 months, because in 3 months we're going to come back with a supplementary budget, adjusting the allocations and asking for more money to spend on other things. So at the end of the day, I think our seriousness with this sector is not demonstrable in our actions. There's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of writing, there's a lot of debate, but it is not demonstrable in our action that we're really serious about our education system.
And Mwalimu Echesa, the first time the 50%, which was supposed to have been 11,122, what ended up in school bank accounts were 6,000 shillings. The 30% for the second time ongoing, nearly coming to an end, was supposed to be 6,673. And 2,000 ended up in school bank accounts, so already on deficit before the start of that term. Seems then that because of political indifference and lack of priority, education is no longer a national priority, especially for the policy players, given what we are witnessing now.
For the policy players, it remains a priority because at least the policy players have put it on paper. For the political players and the implementers, it is not a priority at all. Why do I say so? The Minister of Education in this country should be giving the policy direction, and the head of the executive should be pushing his executive to implement. Jogo House is a crime scene. Why am I saying it's a crime scene? When you hear the Auditor General saying that we have lost funds, it's not about the principals and the teachers who are taking this money. How many principals have been charged? How many teachers have been charged? The crime scene is at Jogo House. And I know of schools, and the CS can challenge me in this. I know of school that has 1,050 students. Jogo House only sent that 6,000 to about 800 students. And it cuts across the country. You know, we have many students in this country, Ayub. If you are to slash, say, 4,000 or even 100 shillings per every student, you become a millionaire overnight. So, who is this person messing with numbers at Jogo House over time? There are discrepancy of the numbers declared on NEMIS, of the numbers that are funded, and quite a number of students are floating without funding at all, and they expect these schools to continue doing what is supposed to be done. Number two, Kenya is forgetting that it is a signatory to very useful international instruments. The Universal Charter on the Rights of the Child, the African Charter on the Rights and the Welfare of the Child. Kenya is committed to Sustainable Goal number 4, which ensures inclusive, equitable and quality education for all. But there is no commitment in terms of funding. What is the value of us saying that education is getting the huge allocation when of that huge allocation is only 45% that is funded, and it's not sufficient? And I forgot to mention that even in the 22,244 shillings, government has already given a policy direction that 2,000 be used for infrastructure. They are diverting money that was supposed to be used for tuition and operations. And when did Kibaki leave office? Many years ago. This 22,244 was being given to school when the cost of 1 kg of sugar was just about 60 shillings. When the cost of a bag of maize was about 2,000 shillings. Despite the prices of commodities tripling, what we are doing as a country, we are reducing the funding itself and reducing the release of funds. We are crippling this particular sector. And today we are meeting here to discuss education. We are saying that this sector is not a going concern. Tomorrow someone will health professionals, and they will say in health is not a going concern. Road and infrastructure. So which area in this country is a going concern? So we are crippling the entire country.
When we get back from the break, Honorable Karole, I begin with you on the pertinent questions, especially what was pointed out by the Auditor General Nancy Gathongo and the NEMIS and schools that don't exist, but they end up getting capitation fee. The fact is then that such ghost schools or learners enrolled into the system, it can only happen by human action. And the digital footprints are all over. You agree with me, as he has mentioned. We welcome your contributions as we discuss this important matter and the political indifference over such a critical sector in our country and disguised as fiscal responsibility. But yesterday, the president came out to reassure parents and stakeholders that free primary education and free day secondary education is here to stay. But to what extent and effect, we'll be talking about that in the second part of our discussion here on DayBreak. Stay tuned.